Hello and welcome to Investment Insight. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's break down what's happening in the markets today in a clear and simple way. Imagine walking up to a company that lost nearly $5 billion last year, handing them $2 trillion, and basically saying, keep up the good work.
Right, which sounds like just an absolutely terrible idea.
It sounds insane.
Okay.
But yesterday, Wall Street did exactly that.
Yeah, they did. And honestly, it is easily one of the most fascinating market events I think we'll see in our lifetime.
Oh, without a doubt.
I mean, the sheer scale of the capital moving around right now, it's completely reshaping how we even value infrastructure.
So let's set the scene for you listening at home. Yesterday, June 12th, 2026, SpaceX went public.
Finally.
Right, finally. And they raised $75 billion. That makes it literally the largest initial public offering in human history.
Massive. Just a massive amount of money.
Yeah. So the stock was offered at $135 a share. And almost immediately after the opening bell, it surged. It hit this intraday high of $176.45.
Wow.
Yeah, before it kind of settled down and closed the day at $160.95.
And, that closing price is incredibly important to look at.
Why is that?
Well, because it shows us that the institutional buyers, the massive pension funds, the big banks, they weren't just stepping in to make a quick buck in the morning and dump it.
Right, they didn't just take the profit and run.
Exactly. They held the line. There was a real sustained appetite to own this company for the long haul.
And that closing price, that 160.95, that puts the total market capitalization of SpaceX, so the total value of all its shares combined, at roughly $2.1 trillion.
Right out of the gate. 2.1 trillion.
Right out of the gate, which for a beginner investor, seeing a company valued at over $2 trillion on day one is, well, it's intoxicating.
And it's a huge headline. It pulls everyone in.
Right. But the mission of our deep dive today is to kind of step back from all that hype. We want to figure out exactly why Wall Street is throwing so much money at SpaceX.
Because it's not just about rockets anymore.
No, not at all. And more importantly, we want to explore whether a historically great company automatically makes for a great stock to buy.
Which is probably the single most important lesson any investor can learn.
Definitely.
You can have a company that is fundamentally changing the course of human history, right? But if you pay way too high a price for a piece of that company, your personal investment return can still be disastrous.
You can still lose your shirt.
Exactly. We have to separate the grand vision from the cold, hard math.
So let's jump right into that math.
Yeah.
Because looking at the balance sheet, there is a massive disconnect here.
A huge one.
Right. To understand what investors are paying for, we have to look at the money SpaceX is actually making today.
Right.
And according to recent analysis of their 2025 financial disclosures, the company brought in about $18.7 billion in revenue.
Which, to be fair, is phenomenal for an aerospace firm.
It is. But revenue is just the money coming in the door. You have to look at the bottom line.
Always look at the bottom line.
Yeah. After paying for rocket development and employee salaries and all that launch infrastructure, SpaceX did not make a profit.
Not even close.
No. They actually posted a net loss of roughly $4.9 billion for the year 2025.
So a nearly $5 billion loss, yet they are valued at $2.1 trillion.
Right, meaning they're trading at over 90 times their revenue.
Which is astronomical.
It is. For context for you listening, if you look at a mature, highly profitable tech giant like an Apple or a Microsoft, they typically trade at maybe, 7 to 10 times their revenue.
Exactly. Trading at a 90 times revenue multiple while losing billions of dollars, it basically implies that the market is baking in some insane future growth.
They're pricing in a perfect future.
Right. Wall Street uses these complex models called discounted cash flows, which is basically just a fancy way of guessing how much cash a company will generate over the next decade.
And then working backwards to figure out what those future dollars are worth today.
You got it. And for the math to work at a $2.1 trillion valuation, SpaceX has to completely dominate several different massive industries.
It's kind of like, think of it like buying a neighborhood lemonade stand for $1 million.
Okay, I like that. Right.
You're not paying $1 million because of the lemonade they sold yesterday.
No, because they probably made like $12.
Exactly. You're buying it because you're absolutely convinced they're going to invent some new super lemon that takes over the world in 10 years.
Right. You're paying a massive premium for a future monopoly.
So what exactly is this future monopoly? Because, they aren't just selling rockets, are they?
No, not at all. Honestly, rockets are a notoriously tough business.
Very low margins, right?
Low margins, the long cycles are cyclical, and obviously the risk of explosion is very high.
Yeah, things literally blow up.
Right. So investors are actually buying the future cash flows of Starlink's global internet monopoly, these guaranteed long-term defense and NASA contracts, and, well, most crucially based on recent data.
The AI piece.
Yes, they're buying AI infrastructure.
And that right there, that pivot is what I find so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
SpaceX is no longer just an aerospace hardware company.
No.
They are pivoting to become the backbone for artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Wall Street is basically evaluating them as a next-generation cloud computing giant.
Which completely changes the valuation game.
Let's look at the numbers on these pre-IPO cloud deals because, man, they are staggering.
They really are.
Like, Google signed an agreement to pay SpaceX $920 million a month.
A month. Let that sink in.
Almost $1 billion every 30 days, starting in October 2026.
And in exchange for that, Google gets access to 110,000 NVIDIA GPUs.
Which are those incredibly powerful, incredibly expensive chips used to train artificial intelligence.
Exactly. Plus all the computing power that SpaceX is setting up.
And it's not just Google, right? Anthropic signed a deal, too.
Yeah, Anthropic, which is one of the leading AI research labs out there, they also signed on to use SpaceX's new Colossus 1 data center.
Wow. So when you aggregate these deals, data shows the estimated total contract value over the coming years exceeds $70 billion.
And that massive revenue visibility, that guaranteed future income, is what makes Wall Street feel comfortable paying that crazy 90 times multiple.
But, and this is where it gets sci-fi, the truly wild part isn't what they're building down here on the ground.
Oh no, the ground is just the beta test.
Right. The ultimate vision, the actual thing driving the $2 trillion price tag is the orbital dream.
This is where the story gets really crazy.
So back in January 2026, SpaceX filed a plan with the SEC, the federal agency that regulates communications.
Right.
And they basically asked to launch 1 million solar-powered AI data centers into Earth's orbit.
1 million, just hovering up there. This is the absolute core of the new valuation narrative.
So why space? Why go through all that trouble?
To understand why it's so appealing, you really have to understand the massive bottleneck happening down here on Earth.
The power grid.
Exactly. Artificial intelligence requires massive amounts of computing power, which requires massive amounts of electricity.
Right, and our terrestrial grids are just tapping out.
They're completely exhausted. We are running out of suitable land with access to gigawatt-level power. And we're struggling with the immense amount of water and energy required just to cool these NVIDIA chips down.
So SpaceX's pitch is basically, hey, let's monetize the failure of the Earth's electrical grid by just moving the whole bottleneck to space.
Precisely. Up in low Earth orbit, solar power is completely unimpeded by weather. There are no clouds.
No cloudy days to ruin the solar farm.
Right, and no day-night cycle if you position them correctly. It's just constant free energy.
Okay, wait, hold on. I got to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Putting servers in space?
Mm.
I mean, I can barely keep my gaming laptop cool on my desk without the fans sounding like a jet engine taking off.
Oh, I know the sound.
Right, and space is a vacuum. A thermos uses a vacuum specifically to keep coffee piping hot because there's no air to carry the heat away.
That is a very good point.
So wouldn't billions of dollars of delicate NVIDIA chips just instantly melt into slag up there?
It is a fantastic point, and honestly, it's a massive engineering hurdle. You are absolutely right that you can't use traditional convective cooling in a vacuum.
Because there's no air to blow around.
Exactly. No air, no fans. So instead, SpaceX has to use these specialized radiant cooling systems.
Radiant cooling. How does that work?
They have to build these massive radiator panels. They absorb the immense heat generated by the GPUs, and then they basically radiate it outward as infrared light directly into the deep freeze of space.
Wow. Which sounds incredibly heavy and expensive.
Oh, it is.
So is shooting millions of massive metal radiators and heavy computer servers into orbit actually a sound financial plan?
Well, according to a comprehensive research study published back in April 2026, they tackled that exact question.
And what did they find?
The conclusion was pretty sobering. Right now, orbital data centers are not economically viable for commercial AI use.
Wow. Not viable at all.
No. When you factor in the sheer cost of launching heavy server racks, plus manufacturing the radiant cooling panels,
Plus the shielding, right,
Yeah.
to protect the chips from space radiation.
Exactly. Heavy cosmic radiation shielding.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, you can't just send an IT guy up in an elevator to swap out a broken hard drive.
Right. If a server breaks, it's just floating space junk.
Yeah. So when you add all that up, the costs vastly outweigh the benefits of that free solar power.
So this whole orbital AI thing, it's purely a speculative option at this point.
Absolutely. It's a huge bet. And those $70 billion contracts with companies like Google,
Yeah.
they aren't blank checks. They come with very strict cancellation clauses.
Oh, interesting. So Google can just bail.
Yeah. If SpaceX fails to deliver the promised GPU power at the agreed upon price, Google can legally just walk away.
Wow. So it's not guaranteed cash in the bank. It's a bet on SpaceX somehow drastically lowering the cost of getting things into orbit.
Which acts as a perfect bridge to the single biggest dependency in this entire story.
Starship.
Starship. If getting heavy things into space cheaply is the only way this AI and orbital internet dream becomes reality, then this entire $2.1 trillion valuation rests on the shoulders of one piece of technology.
Right. The Starship rocket.
Starship is the ultimate bottleneck here. Everything we've discussed so far, the servers, the solar panels, that's just cargo.
And Starship is the freight train.
Exactly. It's the only freight train capable of carrying that cargo at a profit.
So let's dig into the recent test flights, because looking at the data, it's not a sure thing yet.
Right.
Flight 12 just happened on May 22, 2026.
A few weeks ago, yeah.
And the upper stage, the Starship itself that successfully deployed a simulated payload, had a controlled splashdown. Great.
That part went well.
But the Super Heavy booster, that massive first-stage rocket with the 33 engines that pushes the whole thing off the pad, that failed its controlled descent and crashed right into the Gulf of Mexico.
And that crash, that is a severe problem for the financial models.
Because they need to reuse it.
The entire economic premise of orbital data centers relies on rapid, complete reusability. It's like operating a commercial airline.
Right.
If you had to throw away a Boeing 747 every single time you flew from New York to London.
A ticket would cost millions of dollars.
Exactly. So if SpaceX has to rebuild that massive super heavy booster every single time they launch, the cost to put a server rack in space remains astronomically high.
So it's kind of like building the most advanced automated shipping port in the world. You've got billions of dollars of cargo waiting on the docks.
Yeah.
But the only cargo ship large enough to make the trip keeps sinking during its sea trials.
That is exactly what's happening. And the pressure to fix this isn't just coming from the stock market either.
NASA's sweating too, right?
Oh, heavily entangled. Just recently, on June 9th, NASA reiterated that their Artemis III mission, the one to put humans back on the moon in 2028, it absolutely requires Starship.
Right. They need Starship to successfully complete these complex docking tests in Earth orbit by late 2027.
So the U.S. government and Wall Street are both completely reliant on this single rocket working flawlessly.
No pressure.
Right. If the full reuse of Starship is delayed by even a few years, those complex, discounted cash flow models that Wall Street is using to justify that $160 share price, they just implode.
Because the math stops working.
The risk of technical delay is immense. I mean, rockets explode, engineering timelines slip. That's aerospace.
But investors are currently pricing the stock as if the freight train is already running a daily flawless schedule.
Exactly. Pricing in perfection.
Okay, so let's say you're listening, and you're an investor who actually believes in the vision.
Sure, you're a true believer.
Right. You understand the risk with Starship,
Yeah.
but you want to put your money on the line because you believe in the long-term payoff.
Fair enough.
Normally, if you buy shares in a public company, you get a vote. You have some say in electing the board of directors, basically to ensure the CEO is acting in your best interest.
That is how it usually works, yes.
But looking at the structural filings of this SpaceX IPO, man, that is not the case here at all.
Not even a little bit. What you're referring to here is often called a governance discount in finance.
Okay, unpack that for us.
When we analyze the IPO's corporate governance structure, the concentration of power is just staggering. Elon Musk owns 42.5% of the company's equity.
Okay, so less than half the actual ownership.
Right, but because SpaceX uses a dual-class share structure, he holds 83.8% of the total voting power.
Wow. Let's explain that for the listeners real quick. A dual-class structure basically means there are two types of stock.
Yep.
The stock you and I can buy on the open market might get, say, 1 vote per share.
But the special stock held by the founder might get 10 or even 100 votes per share.
Correct. So it means that no matter how many regular shares Wall Street buys, they can never, ever outvote him.
Never. He has absolute, undisputed control.
He's the CEO, the chief technology officer, and the chairman of the board.
And on top of all that, the IPO structure includes forced private arbitration clauses for shareholders.
Okay, which means what exactly? Like,
Okay.
if the company does something illegal or violates its fiduciary duties to me as a shareholder, I can't join a class action lawsuit in a normal public court.
Exactly. You are severely restricted. You would be forced into a private arbitration process.
And those are notoriously bad for the little guy, right?
Very bad. They notoriously limit shareholder leverage and transparency.
So, as an investor, I'm basically buying a ticket on a luxury cruise ship where the captain legally owns the lifeboats, answers to no one, and can just change the destination mid-voyage if he feels like it.
That's a great analogy.
I have zero ability to hit the brakes if he decides to do some risky deal with one of his other companies.
And that ecosystem crossover, that isn't just hypothetical. We are already seeing massive integration between SpaceX and Musk's other ventures. Recent industry analyses highlight this $250 billion acquisition flow integrating SpaceX with xAI, his artificial intelligence startup.
Oh, wait, xAI is a private company, right?
Yes, xAI is completely private, while SpaceX is now public.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When one person controls both a massive public entity and several private entities like Tesla, Neuralink, X, and xAI, ordinary public shareholders face an enormous conflict of interest risk.
Because his loyalty is split.
Right. A CEO has a fiduciary duty to prioritize the financial well-being of their public shareholders. But, say, Musk decides to allocate scarce, highly valuable NVIDIA computing resources or top engineering talent over to xAI instead of SpaceX.
The public shareholders of SpaceX just have to sit there and take it.
They have virtually no legal mechanism to demand transparency or stop the transfer.
So you aren't just betting on the technology working.
No. You are betting entirely on the benevolence and undivided attention of one single individual.
Which is a massive structural risk. But, let's zoom out even further, because there is an external risk here that no one at SpaceX can control, not even the CEO.
And it's a big one.
And it ties directly into the current political climate. So we talked earlier about those million solar-powered AI data centers in orbit.
Right.
The sun's energy up there is free. But the technology required to capture it in the harsh environment of space, that is definitely not free.
No. And this brings us to a critical supply chain vulnerability.
Let's hear it.
To build solar panels that are efficient enough to power AI servers and durable enough to withstand cosmic radiation without degrading, you cannot just use the standard silicon panels you see on a residential rooftops.
You need the good stuff.
You need space-grade solar cells, and those require specific critical minerals, primarily gallium and germanium.
And let me guess, the United States doesn't mine nearly enough of those.
Nowhere near enough. The reality of the global supply chain is that China completely dominates the refining and production of both gallium and germanium.
Of course they do.
They hold a near monopoly on the process materials required for these space solar arrays.
And with the current geopolitical tensions under the Trump administration, trade policies regarding these critical supply chains are a massive flashpoint right now.
Exactly. In fact, strict export controls on these exact minerals have already been used as leverage in trade disputes before.
So they could just cut off the supply.
Right. If you are evaluating market risk, you have to look at this vulnerability. A company whose entire future growth narrative relies on millions of tons of highly restricted foreign-controlled materials. They are facing severe geopolitical risk.
So just to recap this, the grand vision of SpaceX becoming a $2 trillion AI infrastructure behemoth relies on servers in space,
Yes.
which rely on space-grade solar panels,
Yes.
which rely on raw materials that can be restricted by a foreign government at literally any moment due to ongoing trade negotiations under the Trump administration.
That is the hidden bottleneck. If export controls tighten, SpaceX's timeline for deploying those orbital data centers could just grind to a halt.
And then it wouldn't even matter if Starship was flying flawlessly every single day.
Exactly. The rockets would have nothing to carry.
Wow. Okay, let's bring this all together for you listening at home, trying to figure out what to do with all this information.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is. The core lesson here from this deep dive is separating a fascinating, world-changing story from a reasonable investment price tag.
Right. Price matters.
There is absolutely no denying that SpaceX is a historic pioneer. They've revolutionized space logistics, they're building a global satellite internet network, and now they are pushing the boundaries of AI infrastructure.
I mean, they are arguably one of the most innovative engineering firms in human history.
But innovation doesn't automatically mean a stock is cheap. At a $2.1 trillion valuation, trading at 90 times its revenue while losing nearly $5 billion a year. The market is pricing in absolute perfection.
Perfection across the board.
Right. For this stock to actually make sense at $160 a share, Starship must overcome massive technical hurdles to become a fully reusable, incredibly cheap freight train to orbit.
The complex radiant cooling systems for those orbital AI data centers,
Mhm.
they must work perfectly in a vacuum.
And the supply chain for critical minerals must remain entirely uninterrupted by any geopolitical trade wars.
And on top of all that, you as an investor have to accept that you have zero voting power or legal recourse if the founder decides to pivot the company's resources to his other private businesses.
It is basically the definition of a high-risk, high-reward growth option.
It really requires a flawless alignment of engineering, economics, and geopolitics.
Exactly. So while it might be an incredible company to watch, it's probably not a safe, stable, set it and forget it investment for your retirement account.
Definitely not. But before we close, if we connect all these technological and geopolitical dots we've talked about today, it raises a rather profound question about where we are actually heading.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, we are basically watching the potential migration of the internet's brain.
Right, good.
So if the future of global AI computing actually moves off-planet just to escape the limits of earthly power grids, but the physical materials required to build those space servers are heavily controlled by one foreign nation,
Oh, wow.
who actually controls the future of the internet.
Oh, man. That is definitely something to think about the next time you look up at the night sky and see a satellite pass over. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button.